Audio.
Oh,
Hey, Jeff.
Hello, how are you? I guess we're a little bit early, but I like being early rather than late.
I don't have my sound yet.
I can hear you.
Oops. Sound. Here's my sound.
Can you hear me now? I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I can hear
Hey.
you now.
Good. That's great. I was just saying, I guess we're a little bit early, but I like to be early rather than late.
Oh, that's the truth. And I never, there'll be a problem getting logged on or something if I wait too long.
Right. Oh, here comes Judy.
Hey, Judy.
I guess we're in the right place.
Yes,
Oh, yeah. Each of us have our right place.
All right, good.
I'll be back in a few.
All right.
Turn my phone off. Vibrate. Oh, no.
Google that story over the bottom.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Hi, Kathy.
Good
Hey,
evening.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
Hi, Sandy.
Welcome. Thank you for coming last night.
Yeah,
I was watching you.
where are
I
you?
was too.
Yeah,
How was that?
it was brutal. My husband was like, "This connection is awful," and I was like, "They're trying to fix it. It's in the request log."
You're in the know.
Yeah, yeah,
It
Yeah,
was hard to understand the people questioning.
yeah.
It was even there though, because sometimes they were speaking before the mics were on, and
Yeah,
I think when they were getting cleaned, they were getting shut off, so the next speaker would go up. So that was the same for us.
yeah, I think that's what it was. When they were getting clean, people didn't realize they were shut off.
Mhm.
So they kept talking and you missed a lot of it. But hey, we're all learning.
Hey, Pat. Well,
The host just got back in.
Oh, great. We need
hey,
you.
My computer's not being nice. It's saying the host isn't in the meeting on the bottom of my computer, and I don't know why. Because I'm here and it says host.
The host leaves and then the meeting goes on. That happens a lot with us.
You guys go right ahead without me. I'm fine. All right. Jeff, I see you're here. Did you save I'm going to try to make you a co-host. Can you share that yourself? Do you know how?
Yes, I know how.
All right, then Sandy, I'll have you be the co-host, and I'm going to email you Jeff's PDF.
Thank you, Pat. I just want to make sure we could put that up on the screen, and it sounds like that's a good plan.
All right, Kurt just got on. Who else are we waiting for? Bob may not be here tonight. He did send me a text. He had a personal obligation and I told him to go for it. So he's probably not going to be on tonight.
You know if Will is getting on?
I don't know. I didn't hear from him. But we're gonna open the meeting anyways. We'll start with Pat, if you could read the remote participation agreement, that would be great.
Absolutely. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A, Chapter 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing a limitation on the number of people that may gather in one location, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information such as instructions and guidelines for remote by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website at www.yarmouth.ma.us. That's enough.
I believe we are recording, is that correct?
I'm hoping.
And we,
I was trying to make hosts and I was trying to transfer just paperwork and record. So give me just a sec. Make
All
sure
right.
that I'm recording. We are
Right.
recording, madam.
says
We
we-
are.
okay.
I was looking for some of like the last meeting recording of it and I couldn't find it yesterday.
No, JP hasn't transferred that one on, but he did transfer some others that we've done
Okay.
previously.
But I believe you can probably still get it on YouTube. But,
I looked, couldn't find it.
No,
Oh.
it hasn't been transferred because it hasn't been captured yet. Because of town meeting, we really needed to just focus on the town meeting in the last 2 days. So we've had a really hard time getting past anything else. It's been pretty much 10 hours each day of changing a number of things, right, Jeff?
all right, so I think I need a roll call vote now that we've read that remote participation. Sandy, aye. Kathy,
I,
Lindsay,
Here, aye.
Judy,
Aye.
and Kurt.
hello Kurt. Oh, his sound is off.
Yeah, Kurt, you're muted.
Okay, so if Kurt doesn't vote, do we have a quorum?
Yes, I think so. We have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 7 of us.
Okay,
Yes. So Kurt, I don't know if you can hear us or not, but you might want to turn your sound on eventually. All right, so let's get started. Thank you all tonight for attending. We have approval of minutes. I don't believe we have any minutes tonight.
No, ma'am.
Oh, we did get it. That's not true. We did get minutes sent to us the other day. Everyone had time to look at those?
Yes.
Those were from 2 days ago. I believe it's the 12th. Not positive. So I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes with any, if you have any amendments, please let us know.
I'll move to accept the minutes as presented.
And do we have a second?
Second,
All right, we need a roll call vote. All in favor? Sandy, aye. Kathy?
I,
Lindsay?
Yes.
Judy?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
there he is.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Unanimous vote. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start with DPW tonight. We have DPW and golf on. I don't know if we want to let golf go first. I don't think he has very much. Rather than have him sit through the 4 or 5 departments that Jeff has, I think we need to let Scott go first.
It's probably a good idea. I have a lot to cover.
Yeah. All right, Scott, you're on. I know you had one item that you were withdrawing, but I'll let you get into that.
Yeah, so thank Jeff for letting me go first here. We did withdraw the Bayberry Hills Clubhouse work at this point. It was just kind of hard to get everything lined up in time. So we're gonna get our stuff together on that and then get it in front of you when we have everything in a row and all the quoted out process and that.
So
As far-
is that like, is the roof leaking or anything really vital that,
Well, the roof got approved last night at town meeting, so that's all set. So we'll take care of that, and then we'll go
Okay.
through the process of the reshingling and everything else that's wrong with the building at this point
okay,
to get up in front of you too. And then as far as the other requests, all the other requests are leases, but they're operating lease. We use that within the budget itself. So when we have an expiring lease, we just re-up into the same kind of funding for new equipment through operating leases.
okay, my only question, I saw an email on that is that does go before the finance committee. You do present the detail on that lease, on the leases, and they do approve it, especially on the equipment one.
Yeah, so all our leases are approved through the budget and then through town administration at that time.
Okay, all right. Does anyone have any questions on that or any concerns on us not looking at the leases?
I just want to say thank you to Scott because we did have that conversation with you last year, and so often those kind of operating expenses get presented again. And so I think we were so used to seeing those repeatedly that anyway, thank you. And then the second thing is, are you saying it just gets approved by town administration, or does it has to go to the FinCom, right?
Yeah, well, it goes in front of FinCom and town administration as part of the overall budget every year.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
No other questions? I'm not really sure we need a motion since he has really nothing before us at this point with the withdrawal. So we thank you for coming in anyways, and hopefully next year we won't see the leases on the 5-year plan. We probably can take those off the current 5-year plan since they are operating in nature.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
All right, so now we're going to move into road. Jeff, is there any particular order you want to go in?
I was thinking we'd start with water first. We have Lori Rosala on the call here. She's our water wastewater superintendent. We could cover that one, I think, pretty quickly. It's probably the least amount of capital requests for water that we've had, at least since I've been with the town, but there's a number of reasons for that, if that's okay with you.
Sure, that's fine. I just got to find it in the book.
And one of the reasons there's less requests this year is because we just did get some funds approved at town meeting this fall. So planning for next spring, it doesn't need to be quite as significant. We have enough going on with these 2 requests that were approved last night, as well as we are trying to be sensitive to the fact that we're going to start to run short on some of our water retained earnings. And that was the reasoning behind the water rate increase, which has had a first approval by the Board of Selectmen and has a second and hopefully final approval before them for December 1st. So that will help with projects going forward with some additional revenue being generated. But I did want to start with the good news from last night, in case people didn't necessarily hear that, but that pump station project, which is the first phase of a pretty significant pump station project for us, we had a placeholder in the warrant for $3 million. And the revised number, once bids came in much less than the engineer's estimate of that $3 million, we only needed to have town meeting approve $1,511,257. So that's a really good news story I wanted to start with, make sure the committee was kind of well aware of that and how that's going to really help fund other projects, but also kind of gives you a sense of where some of that construction market is currently. And it seems to be in a pretty good place for us to move some projects forward.
Great.
But with that said, I'll cover the items under water. There are several here. The first one on our list, and hopefully it's in your book as well that way, is well redevelopment. It's for $205,000. It's an item that we do on a regular reoccurring basis, an annual basis. We're able to redevelop 4 to 5 wells. And that is a good preventive maintenance program that helps prolong the life of each individual well when we do that. I know you're very familiar with seeing this because we've funded this at a very similar level the last few years, and we found favorable bids that we've been able to keep it at that level for this upcoming year. Lori, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but Lori can certainly answer any specific questions you might have of, where that program stands and how we're doing with that.
Yeah, so as an update, we have 24 wells. So that's what this program basically, by the time we get through all of them, we need to start again. So it hopefully will recur forever because we really do need to make sure that they're kept up to their full capacity, particularly in the summer because our demand increases by so much. So this will just continue that program that was already started and hopefully keep our wells as good as we can keep them going forward.
All right, great. I do have a question on the wells, and it's kind of a hypothetical question. I know you have wells near Long Pond. What the quality of the water in Long Pond, how does that affect your wells?
the wells that we have, I believe, are north of Long Pond.
Yeah, I believe they are. Yep.
Yeah, and generally, I believe water moves southerly from there. So the water at the wells would move towards the pond as opposed to the water from the pond moving towards the well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think our biggest concern with the water quality at those wells that are just to the north of Long Pond is more nitrogen than it is kind of a surface water quality issue that might be from the pond itself. Nitrogen, of course, coming from septic systems to that pretty dense neighborhood that's located just north of the wells. So, that's the big concern there.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. All right, so we want to move to the second item. Anyone have any question on the redevelopment? I know we've seen this before. The second item is water meters.
Yeah, so taking these kind of in priority order, I know you wanted us to prioritize them, so we did that for the committee. This one, Lori can talk a little bit more about, but the number we have in mind is $50,000 to replace some water meters. And Lori, if you want to elaborate, that would be great.
Sure, yeah. So we did a large water meter replacement program, I think about 10 years ago or so, and some of the meters had already been replaced at that point. So what we're finding is that some of our larger meters, the 2-inch meters that serve a lot of like the condo complexes, are starting to fail. And when meters fail, they fail to the customer's benefit. So it's not good for the water department. So it's time for us to start replacing those ahead of time and making sure that they're, reading accurate amount, not only for billing, but for our reporting to the state every year. We want to make sure that we're getting the right numbers for how much we actually sell. So that we have some that we're already working on, and we want to look ahead and make sure that we stay on top of those going forward.
So how many meters would you get for that 50,000?
I think those depends on the size of the meter, but it would be somewhere between, we could probably, some of the larger meters are like $1,000. So those, we could get only like 50 of those with that, but we'd also get some smaller ones. So it'd be somewhere between 50 and 100 meters.
Okay.
Are some of these for commercial use as well? Or are
Yeah,
these
yeah, the
res-
larger meters tend to be for commercial or condos. A typical home would have a smaller meter, like a 5/8 to 1 inch.
I'm just looking at last year's request, and this hadn't been on the 5-year plan at the time. Is this just kind of something that you weren't thinking was going to be needed so quickly?
Yeah, what I would say is that that's exactly the case. Lori wasn't on board, wasn't thinking about these things in a proactive sense. We were looking at more major projects. There are some small amounts that we could put in the operating budget for meter replacement, and that's kind of how we were doing it. But what I would say is she's taken a more proactive more proactive approach to this and replacing meters before they fail rather than being reactive.
Sure, that makes sense. And then just, it says the anticipated useful life is 20 years, but maybe like 10 years ago, some of them started failing. So you think whatever you'll be replacing them with is just going to have a longer life than the ones that we had done 10 years ago?
American Water Works, kind of their lifespan of any meter, they recommend 20 years. So we always want to try and maintain a 20-year lifespan. But yeah, the new meters are, they make improvements with every round of meter. So hopefully they'll be more accurate longer.
Cool, thank you.
Also, weren't the ones that were done 10 years ago primarily residential?
I think so. And also that's when we we also changed a lot of the radio readers, which is another thing that will start to come up. The readers have a battery life. So we are replacing those frequently as well. So we're trying to keep it more, a lot of them were all replaced at the same time. So we're going to end up with a lot at the same time.
Mhm.
So we're just trying to get ahead of the curve and get those ones that we
Well,
can ahead of time. Yeah.
Right.
Welcome on board. We're glad to have you.
Yes.
Yeah, this is something we'll probably talk about again later for some other topics, but I like to get into a program where we're regularly replacing items on maybe a more regular interval versus, a vehicle failing and then having to order 2 or 3 because we waited 20 or 30 years, kind of looking at that. So we can talk more about that for some other things, but, this is probably, you'll see it on your CIP as a more regular item, because if we got in a more regular pattern of replacing things before they failed, it worked out much better for the overall operation. So that's kind of the idea behind this as well. And I think when we went to that fixed meter reading system about 10 years or so ago, I don't think we replaced all the meters. We had to replace the reader component to it, but I think some of the meters were able to be maintained, and so they might be a little bit older. Any other questions?
No, I'm all set. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so the next item we have is $250,000 for Route 28, Barnstable to Parkers River Bridge water main replacement.
Yeah, so the way this was prepared was as 2 separate items, but I'd suggest they really are related. It could really be rolled into one item for water main design along Route 28. This is in conjunction with the sewer projects that are happening. The way it's worded here, broken out, essentially half the town from Barnstable, or half of Route 28 from Barnstable to the Parkers River Bridge, and then Parkers River Bridge to the Dennistown line, is because that's kind of how we were thinking about sewer. We have 90% design plans for that Barnstable to Parkers River Bridge stretch, but we're just now starting to do survey and think about design for the other section. So that's what the reasons this is kind of broken up that way, but it is the money associated with design of the water infrastructure versus design of the wastewater infrastructure, but we want to do both of the work at the same time. And so that's kind of why this is broken up. What I will say is what you have on your write-up was just placeholders, because we didn't have a detailed estimate from an engineer for what that cost would be. Since that time, Lori has gotten those, and so it's good news. It's actually it's less than these 2 numbers added together. So whether you want to combine them or take them separately, the number is actually closer to $350,000 versus $500,000. So that's a good news part of the story. And Lori, I'll let you elaborate on kind of that design and anything I didn't add.
Yeah, so the reason why they're a lot lower is because we're just piggybacking on the sewer project. So for the sewer work, they're already doing the survey, and which is a lot of the work. And so we're able to kind of cut our costs on the water side because sewer is already doing a lot of the work. And this just is it's kind of like the start of, I'm hoping, what we were saying about the meters, trying to keep ahead. Water mains should be replaced about every 100 years. And really in Yarmouth, it looks like they haven't ever replaced really any water main unless it was really small main that they just upsized. So there are some new mains, but they're not, the old stuff is still very old. So this is some of the oldest main, obviously on Route 28, and also 6A has some old mains. So you'll see in the future years, we're looking at 6A as well. But this is all part of kind of the start of trying to do this with meters and water mains, keep ahead and replace things before they fail.
And
Okay.
one more thing I would add is that when the work actually gets done, we're looking to do a lot of this, not all of it, but a lot of it in conjunction with Mass DOT projects. So that'll make it much more affordable on the construction end, where we're just paying for pipe installation, just like we are for wastewater. And the rest of the project, overall road pavement or road reconstruction is all part of the Mass DOT project that they pay for.
So Jeff, did you say you
That's
want,
why we're starting here with the plan is at 28, because that's why Mass DOT and the sewer is all happening there. So we're hopefully going to do all the work in Route 28 and leave it alone for another 100 years and not have to go there again.
all right, Jeff, did you say you wanted us to take these 2 together at 350?
Yeah, I think it would make sense to combine them rather than, so you'd have less numbers or less projects that you're looking at, especially since the numbers came in lower than we had as placeholders. I think that would make a lot of sense to combine them and just do Route 28 water main design.
My question about that was there a scheduling reason maybe to separate them? Like, is because you are piggybacking with other projects? So is the Barnstable to Parker River, that dig happening first?
They're all happening about the same time.
Okay.
In 2023 are the TIP projects. Now, there's a portion of that the town will have to do separately as our own project, but we'll probably be doing them about that same timeframe. We'll need to kind of phase the projects to make them as minimally disruptive to businesses and traffic on Route 28, but they're all about the same time.
Okay, thank you.
So if you're good with that one, we could go to the next one.
All righty. So that, those two, right?
Yeah, that was 2.
All right, so the next one is Higgins Crowell Land Acquisition.
Yes, land acquisition. This is something we haven't done much of, at least for water recently. There's been some, CPC or land bank type of, property acquisitions, but this one is in close proximity on Higgins Crow Road to a well that we have and near a few other wells across the street, across Higgins Crow Road. And so our water master plan calls for us to take a look at when property becomes available within 1,000 feet of a well, and that's certainly the case here. And so that's what we're looking at. Now, we can't say a whole lot about this because we have not negotiated a price with the sellers of the property. What I can say is that the amount that we're looking for from water funds is considered more matching funds as it relates to some DEP grants that are available for property acquisition, and CPC will be funding some of the purchase as well. So that's what we can say is this is just one piece of the pie for funding that acquisition, but we feel it's an important acquisition because it is in close proximity to the wells. Lori, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't really have anything to add on that one.
Okay.
Can you see the screen at this point, the PCI on the screen? I'm not sure you want it up yet, but I got it finally. Is it
Okay,
too
thank you.
late?
That'll be for the road stuff, Pat.
Yeah, all right. I'll minimize it and bring it back up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, this was a question I had asked last week, Jeff, when we were reviewing these. So is the 300,000 a realistic number regardless of how it gets divvied up for responsibility? Or is that acquisition number still being negotiated?
Yeah, like I said, this is just one piece of the acquisition price. And this is a piece, the way I like to look at it, could be considered matching funds for DEP. DEP has a watershed protection program that will fund up to $300,000. And so we kind of looked at it as a match to that. But it's likely, and I can't talk too much about numbers, but it's likely we'll need even more. And so I would say, kind of that delta, it's going to be between the 3 pieces, but I would say that the delta is probably going to be picked up by CPC. And because we can't really talk about numbers unless we're in executive session, that's probably all I should say about the specifics. But this is just one piece of the 3 funding pieces of the project.
When was the last
Go ahead, Sandy, sorry.
When was the last time that you actually purchased land for well development? How often do you do that?
Certainly not since I've been here, and I would suggest it's probably been 20 plus years since any property was purchased for water, with water funds for water protection purposes. The town has a fairly significant amount of water lands, and that's why we had to, come up with some kind of criteria of when would you look at additional purchases. And so what our water master plan calls for is within 1,000 feet of a well. We have quite a significant amount of what they call zone 2 of contributions to our wells. A pretty big chunk of town is in a well contribution area, but how close is too close, I guess. And so the guidelines that were recommended to us by the consultant were consider it within 1,000 feet for our purchase. And so that's what we're doing.
How much is, once you get the land, how much does it cost to actually put a well in?
Well, in this particular, I'll let Lori answer a little bit more about that, but in this particular case, it wouldn't be as much for future well development as it would be to protect an existing well. We do have some other areas in town, not this one specifically, but other areas in town that we're looking at for well development. So we have other options, but this would simply protect an existing well.
Oh, okay, okay.
As far as developing new wells, you're looking at $1 million to $2 million anyway. It's been a while since I've been involved in one of those projects, but when I was in Chatham, we did a couple and they are expensive.
Sure. All right, anyone have any other questions on that particular item? All right, the next one we have is phase 1 of wastewater collection system design for $3 million.
That is, I don't have that information in front of me currently, but that is going to be a placeholder as well. I think that's going to turn out to be a high number. In fact, last night we approved some funds at town meeting that are going to wastewater design, and that was about $536,000, I believe. So that'll, come down somewhat, but that is, we're going to need some additional wastewater design funds. But right now, the best we have is that $3 million number. We need to get some better refinement of that. But that's essentially what we're looking at. That's not as well developed as our other request. It's, again, at this point, it's more of a placeholder for that work.
So will that be going forward at the annual town meeting, and what?
We will need to have something at the annual town meeting. Again, hopefully it'll be less than that amount, but at this point, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. We need to talk with the Water Resource Advisory Committee kind of more about the timing of design. You're going ahead with the DHY partnership will be key to that. If that goes forward, we'll need funds for design sooner. If that doesn't, we have a little bit more time to react. What was approved at town meeting last night relates to some of the Mass DOT projects where we really need to have that design done and incorporated into plans that are being done by Mass DOT and their consultants. So that keeps us on track for all of that work. But this design that's in this other request is for projects that we would do by ourselves, more standalone types of phase 1 wastewater collection system design. And the timing of that is still to be determined, but there is it's very likely we're going to need some portion of that for the spring, but I don't have a more specific number for you at this time.
Okay.
And just to cover phase 1 in case, just so you're aware, our phase 1 currently in Yarmouth that we've been discussing with the Water Resource Advisory Committee and the Board of Selectmen is all of Route 28 from the Barnstable Town Line to the Dennis Town Line, including South Shore Drive, as well as Old Main Street. There's some pretty good maps out there on the town website under the wastewater page of where our first phase is. So it's more than just Route 28, but there are some other sections that need to be dealt with as well. So obviously the sections that aren't Route 28 are something that are going to be entirely Yarmouth's responsibility to design and deal with the total construction project of.
All right, thank you. Moving on, we have a vehicle replacement.
Yeah, I'll just mention this briefly. There's a vehicle for water that is pretty significantly aged and deteriorated and needing a lot of maintenance. Some of that detail was on the individual request that you have before you. We have a $50,000 number in there. We anticipate the replacement vehicle will be of the F-250 class. And typically for that class, that size vehicle, we've requested $50,000 in the past. In fact, at last night's meeting, we had an F-250 size vehicle funded for sanitation that was $43,000. And so that was a little tight. This gives a little bit more opportunity to make sure that we get it what we need with that particular vehicle. Lori can talk a little bit more about that, but with these water vehicles, they typically have more equipment associated with them. Sometimes they'll have a utility body, things like that. So they're a little bit more money, but we're comfortable with the number that you see before you. Lori, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, this is just a truck for one of our typical water operators that goes out to the stations every day. They get a lot of miles because they have to drive to all 24 sites sometimes in a day, usually not in one day, half in a day. So they get a lot of miles, and they carry a lot of tools. So they have toolboxes, and they also plow out all the sites in the winter because we have a lot of driveways to plow among all our buildings. So it's an important vehicle. They're first responders as far as the water department goes to any issues with the wells. So it's important that they have a reliable vehicle to get to the sites.
So they do plow.
They plow, if the truck plows, but it plows water facilities. They're not plowing the streets.
Okay.
Yeah, we probably have a total of maybe 4 of the water vehicles that help us with the roads. It really depends on not just the vehicle, but the driver's availability and interest in working those, midnight hours to do plowing for highway. But we do have a few that help out with that. We do have that requirement that we're committed to making sure that all new vehicles have a plow and are able to plow so that if needed, they can. But like Lori says, there's a pretty significant amount of water access to the wells, water areas, the parking lot here at the office building that needs to get plowed that water takes care of. So there's a lot for them to do during a snow event, even if it's just to help out water.
Right, right.
A little more detail on the vehicle. I think it's like a 2007 Chevy pickup, and I believe the mileage was somewhere in the 160,000 mile. So it certainly meets all your criteria related to age and mileage.
Really
We're
does.
very sensitive to that.
Yeah.
I have a question that's just related to a comment, which was that you don't have a mechanic. And so all the repairs are being done at the dealer. So are we currently recruiting for that position, or is that kind of on hold until the new facility is ready? What's the status on that?
Well, water doesn't have a dedicated mechanic. Highway has 2 mechanics that do the vehicles that they can. It's mostly going to be the heavy trucks, the highway trucks. They do help out with, some of the other vehicles, but those 2 mechanics can't do the entire town fleet. And so there is a police mechanic as well, and he tends to do a lot of the lighter vehicles, the town hall vehicles. We did have a vehicle study done as part of the DPW building. Weston and Sampson looked at, if we were to do all of the town fleet, all 200 plus vehicles in the town fleet in-house, what would that look like? Just to kind of do a general study. And they said in order to do that, the town would need to employ 8 mechanics. We obviously don't do that. We just have the 3, 2 highway and 1 police. And so because of that, a significant number of the town vehicles are sent out, whether it's the Sunoco or the dealer or, miscellaneous repair shops in town. But that's just because we don't have enough staff to maintain all vehicles in-house.
Okay, so it wasn't that the water mechanic position was not filled. There is no such position.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, I have one last question before we move on. I noticed in the 5-year plan, or for the total request this year, the $3 million is not in that particular, it's not in the column. So looks like you're asking for 1,105,000. Is there a reason why the 3 million is not in that front cover sheet?
It probably should be, or we should change the sheet to be, wastewater or something like that. The title on that cover sheet says water division, so we should do water and wastewater or do a separate one for wastewater, but it should be added. And the new number, I believe, is actually $955,000, not including the wastewater design, because of the revised numbers for the Route 28 water main design. So it's below $1 million. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the comments there, I think that's our lowest number. I think I've always requested more than $1 million for various projects, but this particular year it's less because of the status of other projects and just available funds.
All right, so we are voting next week on other departments, like other financing sources like water and golf and fire. And so it would be really great if we could get an updated number so we know exactly what we're voting on.
We can get
Okay.
that.
I will, this is one of those things for that design that's likely to be kind of a bonding authorization type of question. So, I think of it like all big projects, whether it's the pump station project we just had funded at town meeting last night, or the DPW building project. We didn't have a good number for that until, essentially a couple of months before town meeting. Because they are big numbers, they get refined over time as we get closer. I'll do what I can to try to get you a better number, but I might not have an exact number for next week.
Or if you could split it out, so much from water retained earnings, so much, if something's being bonded, then that maybe we could list that separate on our worksheet, because we have to go before the board in December 1st and give our
Sure.
presentation, our recommendation, so.
Yeah, to that point, it won't be any of that wastewater design won't be coming out of water retained earnings. That's completely separate. Water retained earnings funds only drinking water projects. So there's essentially right now no funds for wastewater design. Last night's wastewater design was funded by free cash and some septic loan funds that were rolled over. But right now we're just kind of cobbling together funding sources for wastewater until everything gets formally approved. Now, last night we got a positive vote on the Water Investment Infrastructure Fund. And so if that passes at the ballot in the spring, there's going to be a funding source for that, but that doesn't kick in until July 1st of 21. And so there's just a lag in the funding sources associated with wastewater. This is probably going to be one of those things that if we do have the amount of free cash that's available to fund wastewater design, that's probably where it'll come from. And, that's going to be more of a, Dan, Ed, how much free cash is available to fund wastewater in the spring kind of question. So I can tell you the need's probably going to be pretty close to 3 million, although my hope is that it would come in less. But it could be the reality is we only find that we have $1 million in free cash to actually fund some designs. We do what we can with the money that we have type of approach. So that's kind of where it stands. I can get you a better number of what we need, but whether it actually gets funded is a whole nother question.
Okay, I'm more concerned with our vote on what's coming from the water retained earnings.
Okay, and for that wastewater question, 0 would be coming from retained earnings.
Okay, I get it. All right, so I think, Laurie, we're going to move on to a different section of DPW. I'm not sure if Jeff is.
Yep, we're all set with Lori if she wants to.
Hi, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so where would you like to go from here?
Yeah, from here, I'd like to transition to what we have as the engineering CIP. We do have Amanda Lima on the call as well. She's our town engineer. She'll be able to elaborate on the 3 different requests you have before you that are under engineering. I'll start by kind of introducing those items, and then she can elaborate. Last night we had approved, town meeting approved $1.1 million of the road improvement funds. As you know, this is an annual item that was subject to an override in 2013 at this level of 1.1. And since then it's grown at 2.5% since 2013. So, that number should have been closer to 1.3 that was approved for this current fiscal year. But because of the fiscal times that we're in and the uncertainty with regards to receipts and revenue, the decision was made by the selectmen and town administration to only fund 1.1 million of the road maintenance funds for this year. In fact, that wasn't done at the spring town meeting as would be typical. It was actually pushed off to last night's meeting. But town meeting did approve the 1.1. No stormwater funds were approved this year. And I know that's a separate item, but it is somewhat related because no stormwater funds were approved. We need to use a portion of that 1.1 that was approved last night just to do the stormwater projects and deal with our water quality and MS4 reporting and that type of thing. So, that's something that needs to be carved out of that. So that's even less money that was approved last night that's going to be used directly for road improvements. So that's just something to note. Amanda can probably elaborate on our request for this year, which is $1.34 million. And we got to that number by just going back to the 1.1 that we had gotten and escalated at the 2.5% each year. And that's what that number would have looked like if we didn't have COVID-19 for this particular fiscal year. So that's how we got to the $1,340,245 is just by going back to the way funds had been escalated. So that's where it stands now. Amanda has spent a lot of time working with her team on kind of, what roads get done now, what roads are next year, what type of treatments are done, whether it's paving or chip sealing, how much is, related to drainage, what gets done with crack sealing and chip sealing and that type of thing. And Pat, this is where those charts come into play. And I'll let Amanda comment on those and kind of walk the committee through. I know in the past, you've been very interested in our pavement condition index. So there's a chart there for that. You've been very interested in the list of roads that were done last year and the ones we expect to do for next year. So that's also in this packet of slides here. So Amanda, if you want to kind of walk the committee through this, that would be great.
Yeah, so thank you guys for
Amanda, before you get started, the numbers don't match.
No,
The sheet has 1307 and the summary form has 1340. So I don't know where you want to address that, but please do.
and the next one, instead of 225, it says 230.
So the 1.34 and the 230 are the most accurate numbers. The 1.307 was the one that was originally approved for fiscal year 21. So we can update those files. There may just be 2 copies of them that the latest didn't get submitted. All right, so everybody obviously has been impacted by the pandemic, and construction, surprisingly, has been minorly impacted. We were actually very, very busy this summer into the fall, and because of how the funding sources have kind of fallen into place, like Jeff mentioned, we didn't get our allocated funds in the spring. We just got them yesterday. We still have all of our projects lined up to keep on target for the upcoming summer and fall for our work. So just give a little bit of background, things that we have been working on. So even though we haven't gotten the fiscal year 21 money this past summer, we still got our Chapter 90 money, and we were able to work on the public roads. We weren't able to do the preventative maintenance on the private roads, so we will be deferring those until this upcoming summer. But we were able to do the public roads. So we did about 11 miles, and typically we try to target about 20 miles a year in order to maintain a PCI, which is the paved condition index of about 80, 81. And we can do that by doing about 20 miles of preventative maintenance a year. So that was kind of where we were at for the summer. And then we also, this past fall, that we provided the inspection services associated with the National Grid work, because they had done their final pavement of Great Western and White's Path. So that was very substantial for the whole rest of the Cape in regards to getting that work completed, getting those trenches to have them settled. We did some drainage adjustments in the previous years just to make sure that we would be ready to go as soon as they came. So we got that completed this past fall, and very, very excited for that. And then we have also, because we had talked about this last year, have shifted some of the overhead costs regarding salaries out of RMS to be able to better utilize the funds and kind of focusing on the actual roadway improvements. For fiscal year 22, where we do have like I mentioned, we're in a little bit of a limbo. So we've got, usually we're putting in the request and we're sitting down. We haven't came up with the list yet for what's coming up for the summer, because as soon as July 1st hits, we're hitting the ground running with that money. Now, because there was this delay with the fiscal year 21 money, even though we had made progress this past summer, Now, while we get into this summer, we're spending that fiscal year 21 money. And then once July 1st hits, we won't be tapping into the fiscal year 22 money quite yet, but then we can start in the fall. And then the rest of the preventative maintenance will be the following summer, which is good because then when we're working through the county bid process, we can get the commitment that we have the money already. It puts us in a much better planning because we actually already planned this upcoming summer, this past summer. And typically we wouldn't have done that until the winter. And that also helps in junction with the drainage because we can now do the drainage improvements, because usually that's how we program half of our drainage amount is where will we be doing chip sealing? Because once we chip seal, we don't want to touch the road for 5 years. So if there's a drainage issue, one, they may not be able to chip seal, they can't be a standing puddle, or two, we don't want to have a standing puddle. So we want to be able to address that. And that allows the drainage contract to go through and allows that to settle if they have any issues, repair it. And then from there, we can then have the chip sealing coming after that within, a year after. So again, we were very busy and now we're actually even in a better, financial situation in regards to, best planning out our future work. So for the upcoming summer using fiscal year 21 money, we've got proposed 25 miles of roads to do some preventative maintenance on. We also are working through right now, we've hired under the drainage money, but hopefully we'll be shifting to the construction money through RMS, replacing the culverts on Siegel Road. There are 2 culverts right there that are existing. That highway has been going out and we've hired a contractor to do some emergency maintenance on in the last year. And this has been a reoccurring expense. So we want to get that properly permitted. It takes about 18 months and get it properly replaced. The other project that's a capital project that we'll be working on, and it will be phased in 2 years, is a project we mentioned previously, is the Higgins Cove Shared Use Path. And that is heading north of Buck Island on the east side of the road. And that project that you mentioned will be phased into 2 years. We did actually during this past year get a Mass Trails grant for $150,000. So hopefully they'll have that opportunity again and we'll be able to apply again and also be able to reduce the cost of that project. It's estimated at about $2 million. We'll be continuing on some, and you'll see them in the future slides, and thank you, Pat, for pulling that up. The pavement evaluations are associated with keeping our information up to date, which is very crucial. And then also we just recently are going under agreement for doing an amendment for the Cape Cod Rail Trail Phase 3 and working with a consultant for that. So now just quickly shifting to what you do see on your screen here. And I just want to shift my screen. So this first one here is the PCI, so the Pavement Condition Index. And it's a typical grading of 0 to 100, 100 being the best. We try to maintain about an 80, 81. Last year, this time, we were at an 81. This year, because we've done less work, we are at a 78. And there's a couple of factors in there in regards to that. But so when you're visually looking at it, the red is the worst and the green and blues are the best. And on here, when you're looking at the yellows, those are kind of where we'll be coming up for preventative maintenance. And yeah, as you can kind of see, we try to group it within neighborhoods to be cost effective. And we go from there. And Pat, you don't mind just going to the next? Yeah, please. So as I had mentioned, we charted TARI. You can just scroll up.
Yeah, I just wanted to show the date, sorry.
Oh yeah, that's fine. So this PDF here, again, actually really gives you the visual in regards to us attacking neighborhoods and being the most cost effective regarding our approach. So these are the last time we repaired a road. So the pinks and purples are the more recent, and then the greens and thank you are the ones that are older. And so usually the turnaround is about 12 years for us to go back into a neighborhood, and it's pretty restricted at this point. Please go to the next list. So you guys will get this PDF. Here is the list of what we did complete this past summer. Like I mentioned, we could only work on the public roads. and not the private roads, so that all the roads that we propose to do this past summer are getting rolled into the upcoming summer. We could go to the next. So these next two slides here are our budget, and I know I provided that as a visual last year because I kind of like to be able to compare where we're balancing capital projects with preventative roadway maintenance projects because we still want a good chunk of our allocated funds to be towards the preventative maintenance and maintaining that 80%. And then pretty much when you maintain about the 50% of the funds at those kind of the chip sealing process that we do, you're able to maintain that 80%. But then you can see on the left side of the screen, the capital projects, and those, are the ones that, could potentially be, a mill and overlay or some kind of, resurfacing of pavement where it's a little bit more intensive, maybe requires engineering design work. And in order to implement it, this one in particular has those projects that I had referenced, for the shared use path and for those culvert replacements. And there are a few others. So this is for fiscal year 21 money. I just wanted to kind of, because we're working with this upcoming summer, and then to the next, right, thank you, Pat, is kind of looking at the fiscal year 22 money and those funds. And again, you kind of see that the preventative maintenance gets squished a little bit. And that's really because those capital projects aren't as predictable in regards to when the permitting will be done, when the public outreach will be done, and they kind of shift. But so it will likely end up coming closer to the 50% for the preventative maintenance, and the capital projects will probably get bumped into fiscal year 23 because those ones again are a little bit. So thank you, Matt, for going to the next slide. So here we have, which we typically don't have at this point, is our draft list. So we have 25 miles that we're projecting to be able to complete with chip sealing for this upcoming summer using the fiscal year 21 money. And we will be then also working on fiscal year 22 when it comes to the summer of 22, this over the winter. So we'll be a year ahead, which is very exciting for us. And I believe that should be it. The last one's just drainage when we get to that. I'd like to kind of open it for questions regarding the RMS.
Does anyone have any questions? Now, both these items, the roads and stormwater, is from the levy, is that correct?
That's a good question, Sandy. That had been the case up until COVID. And then what was funded last night of that 1.1 million was out of free cash. What was explained last night at town meeting was that the selectmen are going to make every attempt to get it back in the levy this next year. But it all does depend on revenue and how receipts come in. I can say from the reports that I've heard, but you'd have to ask, Ed and the finance team about this in more detail. But from the reports I've heard, the receipts have been better than expected. There was a plan for like a 30% drop in revenue and receipts, and that hasn't fully materialized, but that's a good news thing. So I do believe that the intent is to put these requests that you have before you tonight for roadway and storm water improvements back under the levy, but that's going to be at a much higher level than myself to determine that, I guess.
What about the sidewalks? I know we haven't gone into that yet, but when we make our recommendations, is that also going to be levy?
I would be very surprised if that was the case, because we have not had a regular approval of sidewalk funds recently. A couple of years ago, some money was approved in some older articles that were rolled together to fund kickstart the design for Higgins Kroll Road shared use path that Amanda just talked about. That was done maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but we have not had a yearly funding, annual funding, if you will, regular annual funding for sidewalks. This was in an out year shown in FY22 last year, and so this is the year to advance that. We do have a funding need for Higgins Kroll Road sidewalks. That's not fully funded at this point, so that's where that money would go. But it's not been a regular funding source. So that's the long answer to your question. The short answer is because it hasn't regularly been under the levy, I'd be surprised if it was this year. Typically, they only put things under the levy when there's a significant amount of available levy capacity. And I just don't think that's going to happen this year, given the fiscal uncertainties.
Well, I know we're given 1.5 million and we need to identify what is competing for that 1.5 million. So I guess my question is, will this sidewalks for 250 be part of that competition for our 1.5 million? Or should we recommend it from?
Well, that's, I think, that's a great question. And I think it's where you feel comfortable. You, as a committee, could recommend it to be funded as stormwater and road funding improvements have been done in the past, which would be under the levy. And, then let the, finance team and town administration work out whether that's possible or not. But I think that would be up to you how you'd want that recommended.
Okay, that answers my question. All right, so Amanda, did you want to go a little bit into the sidewalks and tell us about that request?
So yes, as Jeff had mentioned, there hasn't been a reoccurring, and we are requesting it on an every other year basis, mostly because of just manpower, and a lot of these projects require project management. And this project, this element of our infrastructure for the roadways, it's important. So for each, the sidewalk request, going forward, they could be utilized for either capital or maintenance, because there's a need for both of them. The $250,000 wouldn't go too far, but it would be an incremental step in regards to, bringing our infrastructure up to snuff with ADA and the Mass AAB. So right now, for example, our handicap ramps for pedestrian crossings on whether it be a public roadway associated with sidewalks, we have less than 10% that are compliant right now to ADA and AAB. And so that could be one element of it is, getting those up there so that they have, they're concrete, because the intention is that they're supposed to be contrasting colors. So you've got asphalt that's, dark gray, black, and then you bring a contrast of color in with a concrete, and then it would have the detector pad too, before people, do cross the roads. So that's kind of, one area that there's a deficiency. And then also, we think about our, 240 miles of roadways that we have, there are 37 miles of sidewalks as well. And those, have varying condition, and those could be, receive similar, approach to, our roadways. They can get just an overlay on them, for the actual, sidewalk themselves. And then the other part is, as we talked about with that chart being like 50-50, for the roadway is, capital projects, for what right now, the Higgins Cove Shared Use Path is being identified under the road, the RMS funds. And, maybe one year could be associated, because it's a $2 million project, and, we get less than, $2 million a year. So, could that sidewalk for 1 year be focused, solely on the Higgins Cove Shared Use Path? Or, we have another project that's, upcoming, is the Camp Street sidewalk in regards to getting north on the west side of the road towards 28. So we have that one too. So it could be a balance in regards to, where the, priorities lie. And again, by getting, I think, the interval and getting this, reoccurring to be able to start chipping away at it and developing a plan, I think would be key.
All right, great. Does anyone have any questions for Amanda?
I do. Hi, Amanda. I was just trying to understand when you were going through that, the compliance, is that at existing ones that aren't up to compliance, or at areas where there's no compliance at all? In other words, are we trying to make it the best where we have something, or are we trying to put something in where we have nothing?
The less than 10% compliance is existing pedestrian crossings right now, where a sidewalk that is going down a road crosses another roadway, and there's no formal transition there. So it's not, and we do get requests too as well. Like I got a request a few months ago for putting sidewalks down High Bank. So that does not include there being, and I had actually mentioned that we were putting in this request for that, and that, new sidewalks, if there are needed, could be identified as part of it. Again, it would be that balance between the capital and the maintenance.
That's a very low number. I'm really surprised. So 10% of our crossings are compliant.
Right. Right. I don't think for 250 we're gonna bring it up much higher.
No, it would be, I mean, that money, again, would be chewed up pretty quickly.
Right.
But it would be, and that's why it's an every other year, more or less, because of, being able to have resources within staff here. Just trying to chip away at, improving them as, for example, like if we're going and doing a mill and overlay of a roadway, then we could improve the sidewalk as well as part of that. So it's again, just trying to address it and figure out, where the priorities lie. Same with the drainage. The drainage number is also relatively small. We could do a lot of projects if there was additional funding, but we kind of just allocate every year. We've got a outstanding list of projects and pick which ones are the highest priority.
Do you have any idea if we were to put in a 10-year plan to bring our sidewalks up to compliance, how much that would be a year?
That's something I could look into.
I just didn't know if any of your studies that you've done, I mean, it's obvious you got 10% from somewhere.
Yeah, they, I'm trying to recall on the year. I want to say it was 2018. We had hired VHB, so before my time, and they had done a conditional assessment similar to the RMS. There's actually a whole figure for sidewalks that I could also provide, and it does the same PCI for the sidewalks, and that's where I got the information for the inventory and how many were compliant, because they had checked for that while they were doing their inspections.
I can see that being a question. How far is this 250 going to go?
Yeah.
Type question. All right. Well, thank you so much. If no one else has any more questions, we'll move on to the next department.
I have a quick question. Oh,
So do
sorry.
I.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Kurt.
No, go ahead. I'll let your quick question go because I'm going to make a statement.
Well, mine might be random, but Amanda, are you the person who would be the contact for like the complete street grants and that kind of stuff when they talk about funding more sidewalks and state grants and stuff like that? I'm a big sidewalk fan. I'm sad we don't have more. It was a random question, but I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, every community kind of addresses the complete streets, and I'm not sure if Jeff has the latest update on that. I know that there are some hurdles associated with doing the complete streets program and getting certified. I mean, I've done the 101 for the training, but I think it ultimately is a community decision in regards to whenever you're going to do a streetscape project and doing improvements that, they have an expectation that you'll be compliant for all users. It's not just pedestrians.
Yeah, what I would say about complete streets is it's something that it's on our list to look at and develop a complete streets policy and get the planning board to review that and get the selectmen ultimately to sign off on that. It just has not been something we've been able to do too much on recently. There are a couple of communities on Cape Cod that have become complete streets communities and have passed policies, and one of these days when we have some time, we'd like to move that forward as well. But what I would say is we've got a lot going on, and like Amanda said, on a couple other things, it really comes down to resources, manpower, time.
Totally.
It's on our list to work on. It just.
I'm sure it is. I think it's funny that you said when you have time that you'll get. So I was like, oh, that probably will never happen, Jeff. You've got so much going on. So at least it's on the radar. That makes me feel good. So thank you.
It is, and we still, look at complete streets in every project we do. We just don't have a formal policy for that. We certainly want to make sure that pedestrians, bicyclists, and cars are all accommodated in our projects. We just don't have an official policy. And because we don't have that official policy, then we're not eligible for some of those state grants that are out there related specifically to that type of project. But we do consider that for our project.
Thank you. All right, Kurt, you had a question or a statement?
Yeah. One is sidewalks. I agree. It'd be nice to have more sidewalks, but I've had a problem with this for years in that we don't have the manpower or the money to take care of what we have. So I wish that there was a mechanism more secure than what we're talking about here tonight on how to either create new sidewalks or take care of what we have, number one. Another problem I have is when that override was originally passed for the road maintenance, which is basically taking care of what we have and not creating new stuff with that money. We promised the people that it would stay with that number one, and then number two, the 2.5% would go with it every year so that the inflation wouldn't hopefully get too far ahead of it. And yet this year, the selectmen just sat there and never said a word about the fact that that money was taken away completely and just only recently put back in at a smaller amount. So I would hope that the financial people, selectmen, administration look at this differently, because last night, I think it was 5.6 is the certified free cash this year. That's a lot of money. And, you know, it's too easy to lose the money in different places. They should kind of figure out where they want that kind of money to go when they do that much better than they expected to. And they're also making a lot of excuses this year about the COVID problems. And yet, you know, it should be a temporary problem. And again, with a $5+ million free cash, we should be able to have the money to do some of the things that need to get done.
Right.
So that's my speech.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We agree with you too.
And Sandy, before we move on, I just want to make sure you got an answer to your question. You'd asked about the discrepancy in the numbers. And I do want to make sure that it's clear that what's listed on the CIP plan, the summary plan, are the numbers.
Okay.
What is at the top of because I had a chance to look this up while Amanda was talking. What's at the top of the individual capital request was a carryover from last year. It didn't get escalated. And so that needs to be, but I can tell you that because we're looking at a wider range, a 5-year plan, our 5-year plan did get escalated. So that's the right numbers.
Okay. Well, I did make note of that. We'll make sure
I
that,
will update those or make sure those forms get updated.
yes.
And
We
one
don't-
quick update. Did you guys want to talk about the drainage? I know we talked about the RMS and the sidewalk, because there's also a request to increase that.
Can I just go back before we go there?
Okay,
Can
we
I-
are running a little late tonight, so we need to, we can talk about drainage for a minute, but we still have 4 or 5 other departments to get to, and we're supposed to be done at 6, so.
Yeah, I can go just super quick. So it's just the last slide there. Just kind of want to talk about the project completed, because I know that was a pretty interesting topic last year when we had discussed, is that we actually, during this whole pandemic, we got an additional $100,000 grant for one of our BMP projects for reducing the nutrients that go to the bays. And then we also have today received a bid for $100,000 to do, like I mentioned, those drainage calls and to be ahead of the chip sealing contract. And then our projected projects going forward would be addressing, you know, the MS4 that we talked about previously, and you know, drainage calls and being ahead for the chip seal. How's that?
All right, Jeff, you want to move to highway, or where are we going next?
Sure. Any one of the others? I think we're all set with Amanda. Thank you for joining us. But any one of the remaining are fine. We can start with highway. There's only one request this year for a highway. It's the 40,000 GVW dump truck. You did approve that last year, but like many of the capital items that you reviewed and just got delayed, if you will. And so this is one that got deferred, but was on the list from last year. We didn't put any others on the list, although you can see in the 5-year CIP summary form, we have, you know, many other vehicles that are coming up for replacement very quickly as well. But we are trying to be sensitive to the limited funds that you have available. So essentially this 40,000 GVW dump truck is the same one you saw last year, and we're comfortable last year. It is a 20-year-old vehicle. Happy to answer any questions about that specifically.
Okay, so the mileage, is it still 71,000, or is?
I believe that is accurate. I will double check the number, but you know, it's one that doesn't have the mileage requirements in your policy. It is a different type of vehicle. It's a much larger vehicle. It is one of these big 6-wheel dump trucks, of which we have 6 in the fleet. Its primary purpose is snow and ice removal. It goes out in every storm, both to treat the roads and plow. It is critical for our response. Its use other than snow and ice would be occasional. If there was some, you know, drainage project that we needed to do to move material around, whether it's bring stone to the site or remove spoils from the drainage project. But its primary purpose is snow and ice, as would be the primary purpose for most of the vehicles of that size.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on highway?
So my questions on this truck. Jeff and I had communicated about this one. And do we typically get the maintenance contract? Or is that just the extended warranty? Is that like a new idea?
A little bit of both. Our last couple of vehicles that we've replaced at Highway have been a regenerative air sweeper, which was a very expensive vehicle in the $300,000 range. And then the vac truck, which was funded partly by water and partly through the highway capital request, another very expensive piece of equipment. So on both of those very expensive pieces of equipment, we got an extended warranty. What I will say is we've been happy with the extended warranty, although we haven't had any problems that we've had to, use it. But it is not, they were both covering very expensive pieces of equipment. So it made a lot of sense. On these bigger trucks or these 6-wheel trucks, or even the 10-wheel, one 10-wheel dump truck that we have not gotten extended warranties in the past. We could get into that cycle going forward if the committee so desired. What I will say is we do have very good in-house mechanics for highway that are very skilled in maintaining specifically those dump trucks. And so I'm not sure it's absolutely necessary, but you could call it cheap insurance, if you will. So if it's something the committee insisted on, we could do it, but we haven't in the past for this type of vehicle.
I have a couple of questions on the truck. Does this truck have an hour meter, engine hour meter?
I don't believe that it does, but I could check. It's
I think-
older, so it may, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I think one things we have to consider, as much as we don't want to look at a 60-something thousand mile truck being replaced, is these trucks tend to have a lot of idle hours on them also, which pretty much equates to miles as far as the engine's concerned.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, do we consider stainless or aluminum dump bodies in any of these trucks as opposed to the problems we've had with all the steel ones?
It's something we could certainly look at. I don't think it was priced out that way for this particular truck. We have gone to those aluminum beds for the facilities and parks vehicles we've gotten recently. For these larger trucks, we'd have to look into that. I think when you're looking at a large dump body, I don't know what that does to the price because we don't have one in the fleet. But I do know for the smaller trucks, we have gone to those and been very happy so far.
Yeah, I would also suggest, I didn't get to put my 2 cents worth on the water department truck, but same thing. I think we should kind of make a standard practice as much as we can to go aluminum utility bodies on these trucks, because I was over at Forest Road and I saw the Dick's truck, which is a steel body, which is starting to rust already, and so far the aluminum bodies are holding up better. So
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yep.
Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to waste management. You have nothing under that department.
Yes, that's one we can move through very quickly. The reason for that, and not that they don't have needs, they do. The reason for that is they had 2 things that were approved last night. Both the design for the C&D pad as well as one of the vehicles was approved last night. So they thought instead of doing something in 6 months, let's do what we have with what was been approved, and we'll look at something for next year.
Okay, perfect. All right, so now we're going to facilities and grounds.
Right, so the last one is building and grounds. That's going to include facilities, parks, and cemetery. For facilities, the first request that we have is the HVAC. This has been a regular annual appropriation. It's alternated, at least in the CIP plan, between $50,000 and $25,000. It's very difficult in any particular year to know exactly how much of this we're going to need. I will say it's been closer to the 50,000 generally, but this year we are comfortable because of what was approved and what we have for a remaining balance. We're comfortable at asking for 25, and so that's what the request is before you, is $25,000 for HVAC work. Because we have a balance left over from last year that we're comfortable will take us through and be sufficient when we combine it with the 25. So that's the reason. we'll have to see kind of how this goes. And it may be that $50,000 becomes more of the standard going forward because of price escalations or complexities of systems. But right now we felt 25 would be sufficient for this particular year.
My question on this one was that just down below it lists police station, and we got a separate request from police for their building. So this would be incidental to that, if that didn't cover it, or should we just take police off this? Because
I can't comment on what the police submitted themselves. I do believe police were supposed to submit all facility requests through Robert Nelson, as they've done with Dick Court in the past. And the ones that Robert reviewed that they sent him were what's on our list. So if it's facilities related, I know the goal has been in the past, and I believe was the situation this year, to try to be comprehensive about it. So whether it appears under police or facilities doesn't matter to me. I just want to be consistent and make sure that we're having our facilities experts review the request as well.
okay, so you want to know about this because this is the one we reviewed, we being capital budget, on October 15, and the number is 280,000. So it far exceeds what the kind of maintenance you're talking about. This is for design, system specs, and a cost estimate for a new HVAC system.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that one. In fact, I was the one that put that number together. That was approved last night at town meeting, so it doesn't need to go into the next cycle of review by your committee and town meeting. It was approved last night.
Yeah, that was right. Thank you. So do we need to have police on this one?
That's really up to you and how you want to handle that.
I say no.
If it's
No,
facility related, I do think that at least our facilities crew should be involved in reviewing the need. I mean, that's been the issue in the past as it relates to not just police, but senior center and other departments that make frequent and regular and large requests associated with facilities, that facilities was never involved in those requests. So what I would say is however you want to capture the information is fine with me. I would just ask that you have our facilities experts be involved in the process and not uninvolved.
Judy? Hello, can I hear me?
Yes, I
Can
can.
anyone? Yeah, you can. Okay, so that's how we got in trouble, I believe, previously, is that we skipped that facilities part. So a couple of years ago, it was clearly defined that the facilities group under Dick Court and now under Robert Nelson should really be the ones as the clerk of the works for these big projects. And Jeff is doing the pricing. And so it should not be under police. And under the documents I have for FY22 requests, the specific requests, I don't know why that's in there, because that's, I don't have that in my, I have it in the CIPs, but it's definitely not in an individual request.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the list.
No, it's not in the individual request, and it shouldn't be.
It's not.
No,
In fact, it really doesn't have a department. It just says department.
no, that's definitely a facilities ask under DPW.
But it's really, like Jeff said, since it went in last night as the emergency
Right.
ask.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, moving forward, town hall front and side entry doors, 30,000. Jeff, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh, thank you.
It's okay.
This is one that you supported last year and was simply deferred to this year. There is a price escalation associated with it in the sense that we got a quote for this. And I think the $15,000, if I remember correctly, in which you supported last year, this year won't even cover the doors themselves. And so we also need the cost for installation. So, this is probably an example, and there's probably others that anything you delay is going to cost more next time around. This is an example of that. But I do understand why it was delayed. I'm not in any way complaining. I'm just saying that any deferred activities are generally going to cost more later. and this is what the case is with the doors. It is something that is necessary. It's both the front and the side entry doors. There's significant drafts and gaps in these wooden doors that come through. Also, there's been some difficulty related to the handicap door openers and proper closure because the doors are older and don't have proper weather stripping and that type of thing. So it is, an energy efficiency component to these new doors. And like I said, it's something you supported last year. It's just at a higher dollar level this year.
Okay. The next one is under $10,000. Normally, we don't make a recommendation for items under $10,000, but it's the police station front foyer cement pad. And maybe you can tell us the urgency of that.
Well, this is something that there is deterioration of the cement pad at that front foyer. And like you said, it is below $10,000, but it's not something that we can fund out of any one of our budgets. Facilities does not have even an extra $8,000 in their budget, and police don't as well. So that's why it's here. Maybe it could be a potential free cash ask or, one of those types of things. It is something that, police feel pretty strongly about as far as the appearance of the, first impression when you walk in, and then they're very unhappy with that. And like we just talked about, it's not a huge dollar item, but it is the cost to replace that section of concrete pad.
Is it a safety issue? Can someone trip on it?
There's some spalling associated with that. So I don't think it's like a huge lip type of situation, but, it's not smooth. I guess somebody, could potentially be held up with a walker or a wheelchair or something like that. So I don't know if I want to, say it's a trip hazard, but, it's certainly an issue it's a potential issue for some users.
Okay. All right, we will talk about that. Next item is the police station upstairs carpet. We did not recommend this last year, I believe.
You are correct. This was one that was on the list from last year. The police also feel very strongly about this one. This is in the administration area. We did go up there with the committee last year and review this. I remember because I walked through that as well. They've had some areas where they've got newer carpet, and they've got some areas where it's original carpet. And this would bring all the carpet in that administration area up to, a good standard versus something that was replaced, was installed 19 years ago. So it is going on 20 years for some parts of that carpet. But you're right, the committee did not support that last year.
Okay. And the last item under this section is drinking fountain upgrades.
Yes, this is something the committee supported last year. This would be to upgrade the fountains to current standards, which, typically the newer filling stations allow for reusable water bottles to be filled at, which wasn't always the practice until fairly recently. The genesis of this is primarily because the town meeting before this request, so it's going back to a year or so ago now, plastic water bottles, or the sale of single-use plastic water bottles, were banned on municipal property. So because of that, this makes sense to support that in areas like beaches and parks where users would want to fill up the reusable water bottles. So we want to encourage the use of reusable water bottles, but we don't have a good way to fill them up because now we have those, smaller drinking water fountains that can make that very difficult to do. And so that's what this request is. It was supported by the committee last year, and hopefully it would be this year.
Okay.
So that's it for facilities requests that I have on my list. We do have 3 from parks and 1 from cemetery, which I'm happy to talk about here if you have no questions.
We can move forward to parks.
Okay. The first item for parks is a John Deere bunker and field rake. This is something that I believe the committee supported last year. I'm just going to check my list while we're talking here, but it was Yes, it's something the committee supported last year. It is a slight escalation, as I mentioned before, because of just getting new quotes and the change of model years for equipment. It did go up slightly. So what the committee supported last year was $12,000 and it's now $13,500. So that's just the situation with delaying and the cost of newer models. But that is a piece of equipment that we use to rake the infields at the softball fields, and it's important given the current nature of the fields and the composition in which a lot of standing water after rainstorms happens, and it needs to be properly raked out so it can be used in short order after rain events. And this was also a question that Judy had about the proper use of this equipment and what it's used for. And so I had Dave Carlson comment on the various uses they have to this piece of equipment, and they do use it for several different types of things, which I can go into detail if you'd like, but I know we did give Judy some information on this.
The machine didn't get used much this year, did it, at all?
It didn't get used too much this year. I mean, the guys did a great job making sure the fields were ready. They just had a lot less use this year than they have in previous years. But we all hope that we get past this COVID situation and things recover quickly for next year.
And even though the fields aren't rented this year because of COVID, if they didn't use the rakes, then the grass and others would grow into that clay and make recovering the fields much more difficult. So they do rake the fields often enough to keep the grass growth out and to keep the field safe.
Good.
All right, great. Any other questions on that item? If not, we'll move forward to the Peter Homer Park softball field. I believe we've seen this before.
Yes, this is one the committee approved last year as well at a slightly smaller dollar value of 17,000. This is escalated for the cost of materials and just a renewed quote that we got for this work, which went up slightly. So the request is still the same, but is now at a $20,000 number for rehabilitating the Peter Homer Park softball infield. Right now, the material is such that it becomes, like I mentioned before, a lot of standing water on it, and they have to use a kind of a water absorbent material, and even some of the users of the field will do that themselves so they can get on the field quicker. If we rehabilitated that and used a better material on the infield, we wouldn't need to do that as much. Again, it's something the committee supported last year. I know you went out and took a look at this last year as well, because I was on that walkthrough that you did. We had Dave Carlson out there, and I'm sure he did a much better job than I of explaining that project, but it's something that is that's needed for that facility. For increased use, instead of having a delay to get on the field because it's wet in those clay infields, it would be much better to be a better draining surface.
Right, and the next item, 52-inch mower. I believe we've seen this one also before for $12,500.
Yes, you have. This is something that has come up for at least a couple of years that I'm aware of. I did send Judy a list of all the equipment that DPW has. It included parks and cemetery and the number of these mowers they have. They do have 8 mowers of this type between parks and cemetery. They're used in the summer to keep up with the mowing, obviously. And they do, what I would advocate for is a regular replacement of those vehicles, of those pieces of equipment, I should say. It's been denied the last couple of years because of low hours on that. I know that that some of the committee members have been concerned that professional landscapers in use of this equipment have much higher hours, and I don't dispute that. They certainly do. These pieces of equipment have, certainly the ones that we replaced, between 1,000 and 2,000 hours, and I know there was some concern that it was felt that maybe it should be closer to 10,000 before it got replaced. But what I would say, like some of our other pieces of equipment, we'll never get to 10,000 hours on these, but they are important in order to keep them in good functioning working condition so that we can mow the fields. And as I kind of alluded to earlier in this meeting, I think it's good to get into a regular replacement cycle of equipment and vehicles. And so if there are 8 of these, I'd suggest that every 3 years, maybe you should be replacing one of these mowers. That would be a good cycle to be in. And then if the committee did support the replacement of this, then we wait 3 years for the next one, so that we get in a regular rotation. I think some number of years ago, we might have replaced a couple at once, but I think that that's probably not a good pattern to get into. I'd like to be in a pattern where we're just replacing every couple of years one and get in a good cycle versus waiting till everything ages out and then try to replace them kind of all at once. That goes for the big trucks too. The 40,000 GVW truck we talked about for highway, same thing. If we have 6 of those in the last 20 years, we should be looking at a cycle of every 3 or 4 years to replace one. And then that would better spread them out, would help with the management of the asset and also minimize the, replacement costs happening all at once kind of thing. So, that's what I would say about the mower. But I do understand the committee's concern about the low hours on this. I did ask the parks crews that if they had their choice between a mower and a Gravely, because we do have both of those things that need to be replaced, what would they want replaced? And they insisted that the mower was more important than the Gravely to replace, and so that's why it's on your list.
And we as a committee we agree with you on the replacement cycle plan, but we also would like to see that reflected in the 5-year plan that we're looking at. So we can support a replacement plan if we can see going over 5 years that you have a plan and you're replacing things every so many years. That would be great. But a lot of times a 5-year plan comes in with one item on it, but you don't see another mower in the next 5 years. So, I mean, I agree with you, Jeff, but we would like to see it in the plan.
That's a great point, and I will make sure that gets updated, because we do that for vehicles, but when it comes to some of these smaller pieces of equipment, we don't do as good a job planning those out. And I'll make sure we do that, adjust that in the plan.
All right.
What year was this mower purchased?
The oldest mower in the fleet, let me grab the schedule.
I think it was,
I sent the list to Judy, and the way we would do these is we replace the oldest one on the list. And I think Judy's right, it's probably 2000.
Okay.
Typically what happens with that oldest mower, then it goes to highway and they use it on the roadsides, just so you know. So it does have another future use. Highway doesn't, need to manicure the roadsides, with a, certain length of grass.
You
And
recycle.
sometimes they hit rocks and sticks and things like that. So it's a more rougher retirement for that piece of equipment, but that's where it does go, just so you know.
Okay.
So I just want you to know, because Jeff respects me so much, this is what he sent me.
Oh, lovely.
Wow.
I can't do that by Monday. I just can't.
You don't need a copy.
Judy, that's a work in progress. That it's hard keeping that spreadsheet up to date, but I try my best.
Right, so the next sort of department is cemeteries. We have one item in cemeteries.
Yes, and that's the last item I have for you tonight. This is that Kubota tractor at cemetery used for plowing and also maintenance around the cemeteries. This is something the committee supported last year, and so it's on the list as well this year. I have the age of that piece of equipment on the list. It would take me a moment to look it up, but it's approaching 20 years, I believe, for that piece of equipment.
1991.
Well, more than 20 years, 29 years. So it's
Wow.
a replacement of that piece of equipment. And the committee supported that last year.
All right, that's good to know when we're doing our review.
That's when we started opening graves and digging with it, right? I think it was
Yes, I
later
believe
than
it's the original, Pat, yes.
that. I think it is, yeah.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Next week we'll start our deliberation. And hopefully get that done quickly because we have to get that to the board. And we have Thanksgiving, so.
Thank you very much. If you're done with me, I'll take my leave then.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Have a good night.
You too.
For Pat's sake and for anyone that's new, I wish Will was on, but maybe I can send this out by email also. I just wanted to review our ranking process with the A, B, C, D, and W and what they mean. The A, if we rank something an A, which is the top, it requires investment, safety issues, security, or a financial commitment. B, it could be deferred with operating expense and customer service implementations. C, it can be deferred with minimal operating expense and customer service issues. D is deferred pending further information. If we don't have enough information on something, it would get a D. And W, we still list the Ws, is something that was withdrawn. So
What's the difference between B and C, Sandy? One, B was deferred with customer implications, but C,
yeah, so if B is more, if we don't do it, it's gonna cost us more money on the operating expense line, and it would impact the customers, customer service. Where C it can be deferred with minimal expense and less likely to impact the residents.
that seems backwards.
No, because B is higher. So if it's gonna cost you more money by not doing it, then you'd probably want to do it.
Okay, then I'm still not understanding. So B is deferred with customer impact and,
Increased operating expenses. So
And
in
you've got this in writing.
roads, if you don't do the roads, it costs you money. And costs you more to do it in the future.
got it, okay. I just had a brain block, thank you.
So I guess what I'd ask the committee to do, we only have one more meeting and we have police on that meeting, which is probably gonna take a little bit of time. And hopefully after the police, we talked about going through our rankings and see if we can put something together. So you might want to look at the departments that have already come before us and think about your rankings over the next 4 or 5 days before that meeting on the 24th. I'm hoping we can get something to the board, but the time is really tight.
Sure. I don't know, I'm sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair, but I had written down that tonight we were going to do this all the way until 7 because we were going to start ranking. Is that just something you want us to do individually?
I have another meeting at 7 o'clock tonight. I thought
So
we
do
were
I.
later on the 24th. Yeah, I thought we were staying later on the 24th. No?
I only have us there for 6, from 4:30 to 6, but I can make that change if required. The posted budget agenda, I mean, the meeting agenda is for till 6, but we could modify it. We have plenty of, I think we have plenty of time.
Well, other than that, when are we gonna do our rankings?
No, I'm not saying you're right. You're right. I'm not saying that. We still have time to modify.
And we were gonna vote also on, at least vote the other financing sources, but hopefully. Lindsay, you're on.
I start talking and then it tells me I'm muted. Yeah, I had just written down that we were going to start ranking and vote on the non-levy items, which we could do for 15 minutes if we have it right now, or if that is stressful for you because of your meeting.
Well, I have to feed my husband too. He can't.
Yeah. No. I'm
Um,
coming over. No, I'm just kidding.
So, and I'm not ready tonight. I mean, I did send Pat an email about us getting a list together, separating the levy items out from the other departments like we have in the past to make our rankings easier. And I don't know if she wants to do that, if she wants me to do that, I'll leave that up to her.
No,
But-
ma'am, I don't want you to do that. I will get that done.
Okay, so if we could get that, and it might make it easier for you to start doing your rankings. Because we'll know what's competing for the 1.5 versus other departments who have funds.
Okay, so that'll be the total summary list for everything that we've had in the past that we'll go through with, and it will include the priorities that the departments gave them?
Yes, the A2, all of that.
Mhm.
If I was just changing the agenda to send it up and get it posted because I've got up 45 minutes to be 48 hours before the next meeting, don't I? Or it's the 24th. Oh, we got a little more time. Okay. So let me do this. Yeah, it's the 24th. So I have from Rich, I found his files. And so I have the layout with all the different columns and I can just add it in and I'll be all right.
All
I
right, great.
found that.
That sounds
Great.
great.
But Pat, do you really need to repost it? I mean, those selectmen meetings go forever.
Yeah, but it's not on the agenda that we're taking the vote in last night at the
okay.
special town meeting. We got called on not posting that we were making decisions during that meeting, so I don't want that to happen for us. It's no problem to do that quickly.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we do want to definitely make decisions on the other departments.
So
And
we're
hope-
gonna review and discuss the asks and then vote our recommendations for the Board of Selectmen.
Yes,
Okay, that's fine. I'll get that posted tomorrow.
all right, and I will send out those criterias in writing, so. So Will, he might have got them from Joanne, but we have two people not on tonight, so.
No problem. We'll get that vote, get that in.
Do we have anything else?
I have a technical question, which is, I was looking at some of my own things and my first term was I was filling somebody else's term out. And so then the term I'm in now was from 17 to 20. So I think I need to be appointed and sworn in again. And I don't know if that applies to anybody else, but
Yeah,
I
good
think
question.
before we get out of 2020, I mean, we can just kind of sneak along here, I suppose, but I think I was probably sworn in September, October.
I don't know what my term is.
I don't either.
I do.
The
Well,
town's policy is generally that you continue to serve unless you're otherwise replaced. So apparently, even though they haven't reappointed, because I think I'm in the same boat, that we just continue to serve until they figure out that it's time to reappoint us.
Till they get tired of us.
Well, that might happen too.
So we don't have to get re-sworn in every year. What about the conflict of interest, that little testy thing you gotta take?
Yes, you should be doing that. So I don't have your years here. I usually do.
You sent it
keep-
somewhere. You have it somewhere, Pat, because you sent it too, I think.
I know, I just opened up the annual book thinking it was in there, but it's in here somewhere. So what I'll do is I will contact, all right, what you could do for me is if you feel that your term is up, and I'll check for sure, send me a quick email and say you would like to remain on the committee for another term. And then I will send those together to the new appointments chair, Mr. Horgan. And he will then contact and say that's fine and let that happen, or he wants to go out and replace people, which I don't foresee happening. So just send it to me and I'll put it together and send it to Mr. Horgan.
Pat, it's not Dan Horgan's job. We're under the
He's-
FinCom. The chair of the FinCom appoints us, I believe.
That's true.
That's right. And the moderator, correct?
No, the moderator, I don't know, it's weird, but the moderator and the chair of the finance committee do certain things.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, the
it is.
chair of the finance committee talked to me.
All
Yeah, I
right.
think he appoints us, and the chair and the moderator appoint FinCom members.
Okay, I will look that up in the charter, but if you send it to me and tell me who you want, if you want to stay on, and this is the 19 book, not the 20, then I will get that together and send it. And then if there's anyone, I don't think we have any openings, right? There's no spots that haven't been filled, correct?
No, I think there's an opening,
Ooh.
because we had a guy, he lasted a day.
I remember him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, that-
I think we have one opening.
I think we have one,
7, right?
right,
Uh,
We have 6.
6.
yeah, there's 7, because there used to be 9, didn't they move it to 7?
3, 4, 5. Oh, no, we do. Oh, Will and Robert are both not here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 7.
But isn't Robert our liaison from the finance committee?
Yeah, but he's one of them.
He's one, yeah.
Willis Planning Board, Roberts Finance.
But they still count as
One of the 7.
7.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So then we've got 7.
yes, we do.
Okay, so Lindsay must have replaced the guy that lasted a day.
Yeah. You have far more.
I don't think he liked us.
No, he didn't like us meeting at 3 o'clock during golf. That's what he didn't like.
Oh,
Oh, found you.
Okay.
All right. So Judy, you're up in 20. Kurt, you're up in 19. And Joanne was up in 19, and Charlene Tay, who's not coming, Tietge was up in 19. So it's just,
Yeah.
and there should be 7, and the FinCom
What about me?
representative and the planning board representative are counted within those 7. So I need a note from Judy. And you're not listed in this, Lindsay, so you were there last year, so that gives you 2 more years. You must have taken over for this Charlene
Sharon
Tietge.
Sharon TG, she's been gone a long time.
But that was the spot, and she was good through 19. So Lindsay, I think that starts you through her term, so I need one from you as well.
What about me? You didn't mention my name.
No, you're set till 2022, along with Kathy.
okay.
And Robert's set for 2022 as well. And Will is new, he's taken on, so it's a 3-year or a 2-year term?
Their term is only 1 year.
Okay,
The finance committee and the planning board make a recommendation every year.
for 1, okay.
All right, so I think we're ready to adjourn. If I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor, Sandy, I, Kathy,
Aye.
Judy,
I,
Lindsay,
Aye.
and Kurt.
aye.
All right, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We will see you next Tuesday.
Tuesday. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks. Bye-bye,
Thanks,
y'all.
everybody. Be
thanks,
safe.
take care.
All right, now. I'm not leaving till I figure out how to save the recording. Who's with me? Kurt, is that you?